Hey, good morning. How you guys doing? Welcome to Terra Nova on a beautiful summer Sunday morning in March. It's in the 80s. If you're watching online somewhere where it's freezing cold right now, why are you there? Because it's just been actually a little too hot here, if I could complain for a second. I got a question for you as we're opening up today, and the question is this: Have you ever seen someone leverage their position, their authority, their power, their influence, their advantage for their own benefit at the expense of others, and even at the expense of those who had less than them? Have you ever seen someone harming or taking advantage of or pushing down other people who had less so that they could have or be more? Have you ever seen something like that? And the answer, of course, is duh. Right? I mean, I think most of us would say that's normal. That's the way things just are in upside down world. But the next question would be like, why? Why is that? Because you might expect the opposite. When you think about it, like you might expect that the more authority and position or power or wealth or security in those terms that a person has, the more secure they would feel and the less need or the less impulse they might have to push someone else down or use them and what they have or take advantage of them in order to get more. So why is it that people with power are so inclined to go off the rails? And we see it all the time. It's in the news right now, like ethically, morally, financially. What's behind things like bullying? I mean, think about it. I'm bigger and stronger and more powerful than you, and so I'm going to make you smaller so I can be even bigger. What's behind entitlement, which is so easy to fall into? Sexual harassment? What's behind arrogance and dismissiveness and manipulation and abuse and shame and elitism and extravagant consumerism or greed? And again, you might expect differently. In fact, you might have thought to yourself at times like, if I had what they have, if I had the amount of money that they have, if I had the power, the position, if I had what they had, I would be so good. I would be the best person. I would be so good with it. But would you? Well, why is it that power corrupts so easily? Why is it that advantage and power and authority and wealth and position, they don't seem to make people better? In fact, they seem to make people worse. And if you've ever felt that, if you've ever felt that frustration, if you've ever seen that and felt like this is wrong and it could be and should be different than that, it could be and should be better than that, I just want to say, you should follow Jesus. You should follow Jesus even if you're not sure what you believe about Jesus, because Jesus consistently, from beginning to end, Jesus consistently taught and modeled an inverted paradigm of leadership and power and influence that was it's surprising in our day. It was absolutely unheard of in his day. That power is never to be leveraged solely for the benefit of the powerful, but it is to be leveraged for the benefit of the powerless. So we are in part 9 of our series, Eyewitness. John and the rabbi from Nazareth, and we're taking this journey with Jesus through one of 4 biographies, which is just, we've been saying, an amazing fact of history. Don't miss the New Testament seminar. That we would even have one biography from the ancient world of a rabbi from Nazareth, let alone 4 biographies of Jesus' life that all come out of the first century. And John was one of the original followers of Jesus. He was an OG follower. He was there on the scene. He was there for it all. He saw it all. He heard it all. And it's now years later, as an old man, the Jesus movement is spreading through the nations around the Mediterranean world and to the east. Most of his friends by this time that he writes have already been killed. All the other original followers have already been killed. The other 3 biographies of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, have already been written. And John kind of assumes you have some familiarity with those biographies as well. But now as an old man, I just imagine this. He is compelled to record his own experience, his own eyewitness experience of the rabbi from Nazareth and what it was like to be a part of those 3 years and what he saw and all that he heard. And he does so that, and he's very upfront about the reason why he writes, he does it so that we would perhaps come to see Jesus and follow Jesus the way he saw and followed Jesus. And so we've been saying he organizes his biography, his account around 7 signs, that 7 signs that for John demonstrate what Jesus was doing, the life that he was bringing into the world. The phrase that's often used is the life of the age to come. We translate it eternal life, but it's literally the life of the age, that Jesus was bringing that life of the age to come into the here and now. And there are these signs of like, this is what that life is, and it's coming now. And those 7 signs are augmented by 2 sets of 7 I am statements that are made by Jesus throughout John's biography that kind of connect the dots, 7 of which are metaphors, like I am the bread of life, or I am the light of the world. And then 7 are these just kind of blanket I am saying responses that for informed readers who are reading John's biography, these are like little Easter eggs that he's dropped through the story as you're reading along, and Jesus just says, I am, and you're like, did he just say what I think he said, that are calling to mind the covenant name of God himself? And so previously on Eyewitness, Jesus has come to Jerusalem and come to the temple itself for the Festival of Tabernacles. The festival, or sometimes it's called the Festival of Tents, it was a 7-day festival, and it was one of the big 3 in their calendar year every year, but the first century historian Josephus says it was the most powerful and joyful of them all. It was a fall festival, which means it's happening like towards the end of the fall, going into winter. It's after the harvest, so people have food, they're in a good mood, everybody's grateful, but more importantly, the Festival of Tents, or the Festival of Tabernacles, commemorated their exodus out of slavery in Egypt, their freedom, their journey through the wilderness as they're looking forward to God's promise being fulfilled for them, the promised land. And so in commemoration of that, the entire country would live in tents for a week. People would move out of their houses and live in tents or booths in their front yard or on the rooftops, and people traveled from all over the world to this festival, and they would live in tents and fields and along there. It's like a nationwide camp out. And for some of you, like, that would be the best week. And for some of you, it's like, that would be miserable. I would get 2 hours of sleep a night. I mean, that would be terrible. And so mixed feelings, but I mean, it was just like this nationwide camp out, if you can picture it. And they had all of these great rituals that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the pouring out of the water in front of the altar every morning, the lighting of these massive candelabras every evening that commemorated God guiding them through the wilderness. And these things are 75 foot tall, these golden candelabras. And the lights from those candelabras set up in the middle of the temple, those lights would dance off the white limestone walls, just lighting up the entire region. And in a world without electric light, where no one had ever seen stadium lighting, this was insane. It was like the whole city lit up, the whole area lit up, the festivities would last into the evening, people singing and dancing. And Jesus has come to Jerusalem for the Feast of the Tabernacles, and he has come as a marked man. Early in John's biography, he tells us that the temple leaders in Jerusalem have determined to kill him. And yet he's there. And then John tells us on the last and great day of the festival, Jesus, and this is a gutsy move, Jesus ties all of this profound imagery of the festival, the exodus from slavery into freedom, the journey through the wilderness, this liminal stage of waiting for what God would do next, the water poured out, the massive candelabras lit every evening, the light, the hope of God's future when it would be restored. And Jesus ties all of these threads to himself and what he's doing and this life that he's bringing into this age, and to the people who will follow him, and what it means to follow him, that we actually will be the rivers of living water that fulfilled Zechariah's and Ezekiel's promises. And some people, as they listen, they're like totally entranced by what Jesus is saying, and they are into it. And others pick up stones to stone him. But he slips away, he disappears into the massive festival crowds, and then as he leaves, and now it is the Sabbath, it is the 8th day of the festival. The Sabbath after the 7-day festival of Tabernacles was considered a special Sabbath of rest and reflection on the meaning of the 7 days, and so it's the Sabbath, and as he's leaving the temple, slipping away, he sees a man who was born blind, and of course, Jesus restores his sight because that's precisely what the Sabbath was for. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, that the Sabbath, the celebration of Sabbath, was a weekly foretaste of the life to come, when the blind will see and the deaf will hear and the lame will walk. And again, it's a sign. It's a sign like that life that we're hoping for, it's coming. That Jesus is bringing it into the here and now, the future age, the life of the age to come. But again, the Jerusalem leaders, in this case, John really specifies Pharisees. Pharisees who were part of the Jerusalem leadership, they can't see the sign. They can't see what it means. In fact, there's this strange kind of, it'd be funny if it wasn't so sad, sequence that happens right after that, where they end up confronting this man and bullying his parents. And when he stands up to them a little bit, they use their authority and their power and their position to insult him, to belittle him, and to expel him from their community and from their gathering. And Jesus goes and finds the guy. And there's this great conversation that ends like this. Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into the world, so that those not seeing will see, and those who see will become blind." It's like, what? It's a riddle. It's a riddle. Like, what does that mean? What is he saying? Like, there's a kind of blindness. There's a kind of blindness called willful blindness. Maybe you've heard of it. Or willful ignorance. It's intentional. I don't want to see and I don't want to know. And Jesus is putting his finger on something. Well, some of the Pharisees, some of the leaders who were responsible for bullying that man and his parents and expelling this man from their gathering, they're there and they overhear Jesus say that and they push back and they're like, what? Are you saying that, so we're blind too, huh? And Jesus says, he responds, well, if you were blind, you wouldn't be accountable. You wouldn't be guilty. If you cannot see something, you aren't accountable for not seeing it. But since you claim to see, you are accountable. Because it's one thing not to see. It's one thing not to know. Ignorance is understandable. It's okay. But it's another thing to pretend not to see and not to know what you really kind of see and know. But it's not just the willful blindness that he's going to put his finger on. There's something else going on in this story. And so that's when Jesus shifts into storytelling mode, storytelling Jesus. And he says this, "Very truly I tell you, the one who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but instead is like trying to climb over the wall or trying to climb in and get the sheep out, that person is a thief and a bandit." And Jesus is unpacking over this next scene, this image that's taken right out of the Hebrew Scriptures. In fact, it is one of the most common metaphors in the entirety of the Hebrew Scriptures. The idea is that God's people are like his flock of sheep. God's people are his flock. They are his own, and he is the shepherd. He is the one who cares for and protects and provides for his flock. So famously, right, Psalm 23, the Lord is my, what is it? My Lord is my shepherd, and man, he's a good shepherd. He takes care. He knows what he's doing, and so I'm good. I don't want for anything. He's got me over here lying down in green pastures. I'm well fed. Then he's leading me by this still brook of water, and I have all that I need. He restores my soul, even when things are dangerous. Even when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'm not fearing evil because his rod and his staff are there. My shepherd, I see him and it comforts me. He's like this really good shepherd. And then sometimes the leaders of God's people, like the kings and the priests and the prophets, they're described as shepherds. They're the ones who are tasked to care for and provide for and protect God's flock in the same way that he would as well. And there's dozens and dozens of references to this idea throughout the Hebrew Scriptures. But the scene or the moment in the Scriptures that most obviously lies just beneath the surface of what happens next is one that they all knew and all knew well. It's from the prophet Ezekiel. And here's what Ezekiel says. "The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, prophesy against," or speak against, if you will, "the shepherds of Israel, and say to them, this is what the sovereign Lord says, woe to you. Woe to you shepherds of Israel who only take care of yourselves. shouldn't you be taking care of the flock? And then he goes on, you eat the curds, you clothe yourselves with their wool, you slaughter the choice animals, you take all you want from the flock, but you do not take care of the flock. You haven't strengthened the weak. You haven't healed the sick or bound up the injured. You haven't brought back the strays or searched for the lost. You've ruled them harshly and brutally. And so they were scattered because they didn't have a shepherd. They didn't have somebody who cared for them and provided for them and protected them and led them. And then when they were scattered, they became food for all the wild animals. In other words, the shepherds, the leaders, have used their position, their authority, their prominence, their influence, their power to feed themselves, to enhance and advance themselves, to make their own lives better at the expense of the people they were supposed to care for, and especially for the weakest and the most vulnerable of their people. And this is where anyone in a position of influence or power or authority of any kind just needs to sit up and pay attention, whether you're a parent or a politician or a pastor, a teacher, a coach, a counselor, caseworker, a team leader, a boss, a manager, or maybe you're like leading from the middle, like you don't have the first seat, the second seat, you're like in the third or fourth seat, but you have a voice, you have influence in that group for one reason or another. How do you use that? How do you use what you have? How do you leverage your voice, your influence? Who's it for? What is it for? And there are ways that we do this thing that Ezekiel is describing. There are ways that people do this just over the top and overtly. Narcissism, greed, sociopathy, they are a thing. Ways that people use their voice, their position, their power, their authority to abuse others, to take advantage of others, to benefit themselves. And there are so many ways that we do this inadvertently, maybe even unwittingly, out of our own insecurity or neediness or fears or shame or brokenness, that we can start to lead or influence as a parent, as a friend, in a group, whatever it is, in ways that are more about what we need than what they need, that we start to get others kind of leaning into us, liking us, affirming us, needing us, propping us up, making us feel okay. And we've all experienced that. We've all been in a room where a leader or somebody with a voice in that setting, maybe at work, just started turning everything in about themselves. Have you ever been in a room where somebody was just doing that and how it just felt kind of funky? Some of us were raised in homes with parents who did that. A mom or a dad that just had a way of making things about themselves, that you and your siblings needed to prop them up and make them feel okay. We've all experienced that, and we've all done that. To some degree or another, I know that I have, and so it's good in this moment, like to sit up and take notice. You used what you had. You used the more that you had, your position, your power, to enhance yourselves. You were supposed to use it for the benefit of those who needed the most. So God says, because you've led in such a self-serving way to benefit yourself at the expense of others, this is what the sovereign Lord says: I am against those shepherds. I will hold them accountable, and I will remove them from tending the flock, which is exactly what had happened by Ezekiel's time. Those kings and those priests had been removed by the empire of Babylon so that they cannot continue to feed themselves off the flock and not take care of it. And then, catch this, and then God says, and I will come. I will come, and I will be what a shepherd is supposed to be. I will be a good shepherd. For this is what the sovereign Lord says: I myself am going to search for those sheep and look after them. As a shepherd looks after a scattered flock when he's with them, I am going to look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all the places where they were scattered. I will bring them out from the nations, gather them from the countries. I will bring them into their own land. I will pasture them on the mountains. I will tend them in good pastures. I myself will tend the sheep and have them lie down, declares the sovereign Lord. And I will search for the lost. And I will bring back the strays. And I will bind up the injured and strengthen the weak. I will shepherd the flock with justice. And God's like, because you have failed, because you have been bad shepherds, I'm going to come. And I'm going to be the good shepherd. I'm going to be the shepherd that people need. So back to our story. Jesus is in this like confrontational conversation with these leaders, people who are supposed to be the shepherds of God's people, who just use their power, right, to bully and belittle and insult and eventually expel the man formerly known as blind out of their gathering, out of their synagogue, simply because of his association with Jesus, and that he would not denounce Jesus after they made that association. And it's totally this self-protecting, self-serving, if you will, status-protecting, status quo-protecting move at the expense of this man and his family who, again, as shepherds, they are supposed to be caring for. And so Jesus taps into this rich history of their scriptures and the stories that they all knew, and he says this, very truly, I tell you, the one who doesn't enter the sheep pen by the gate, instead, you're walking around and you see someone climbing over the gate. Now, sheep, especially in the colder months, and this story is happening towards the end of the fall, sheep are being kept in pens, often multiple flocks together. Families would pitch in together. The pens were these large open area enclosures, walled in, stone walls, maybe with thorns or briars on top to keep people from climbing over. And then families would pitch in and they would hire a gatekeeper or a watchman, especially for the nighttime when the sheep were all in there, who could watch over those sheep and keep thieves and bandits from breaking in. And Jesus is like, hey, you see somebody trying to climb over the wall of the sheep pen to get to the sheep at night, you know they're up to no good. They are thieves and bandits, which was a real problem in Jesus' day. In fact, it was a growing problem in Jesus' day. Don't miss the New Testament seminar. And then he says, but the one who just comes in the morning right out in the open, he just walks up to the gate, well, that's what the shepherd does. The shepherd comes through the gate, and the gatekeeper recognizes him and opens the gate for him, and then the sheep, they know his voice. They know what his voice sounds like, and they're listening for his voice, and he starts to call them. He calls them by name, and he leads them out. In fact, there are stories from the Near East to this very day of shepherds standing outside of the pen in the morning, just calling their sheep. And what happens is, and sometimes they have this little song that they start to sing. There's this little melody or whatever, and you'll see the sheep poke their heads up, and their ears come out, and they hear their shepherd's voice, and then they start to come to their shepherd. And sometimes there would be like multiple shepherds that all show up at the same time, and they arrive in the morning, and they all stand in different places, and they all start with their own call, their own little signature song, and the sheep start poking their heads up, and they hear their shepherd's song, and they begin walking towards him, and they'll come out of the pen, and they'll all gather around their own shepherds because they know their shepherd's voice. And so Jesus says, here's what the shepherd does. He comes, and he just starts to call them, and when they've come, when he's brought out his own, he goes on ahead of them, because unlike Western shepherds who will sometimes drive the herd or drive the flock, sometimes even having sheepdogs to help them drive the herd, Eastern shepherds walk in front. They walk out in front, and they just keep singing that song. They just keep calling their sheep, and the sheep follow their voice, of course, because they know that voice. They trust it. They recognize it. But they won't follow a stranger. Everybody knows that. You can teach someone else the very same song, very same words. They won't even lift their heads up. They won't follow a stranger. In fact, sheep are notoriously easily spooked. They'll flee from the stranger because they don't recognize that voice. And Jesus uses a figure of speech. He's telling this story. In fact, Jesus often taught in figures of speech like parables and stories and riddles like the one we just heard, and hyperboles and metaphors. He's like intentionally cryptic, and that's kind of frustrating. It's like, Jesus, just say what you mean. Like, can't you just say it exactly the way you mean it? And he's like, no, I want to make you think. I want to make you think. I want to make you ponder. I want to make you dig over this and think about it for the next few weeks like it just sticks in your craw, because I want your roots to go down deeper. I want you to understand, but they didn't understand. They weren't picking up what he was putting down. And so Jesus changes modes a little bit, and he starts pulling out various parts of the various images out of this metaphor to unpack them. And here's the first one he unpacks. Jesus said again, very truly, I'm the gate. I'm the gate for the sheep. And this is the third of 7 I am statements in John's story. I'm the bread of life. I'm the light of the world. I'm the gate for the sheep. this is like an interesting metaphor. We're meant to ponder what does that mean in the story world that of this metaphor? And then he kind of shifts it a little bit. I'm the gate for the sheep, but all who have come before me are those thieves and bandits we were talking about before. And he's contrasting his way of leadership, his way of life with the all too common way of upside down world. And he's riffing on the prophets like Ezekiel, and he's lamenting their long, long history of self-serving leaders, from the Hasmonean kings to the Herods to the priesthood of his very day, the corruptness of Caiaphas and his cronies, and of the temple in the moment that this is happening, and these leaders in front of him right now who consider themselves to be the shepherds of God's people, who, when faced with a really good thing that happened to one of their own, could only insult and belittle and push themselves up at his expense and expel him from their community. Leaders who leverage influence and power and position and authority for themselves to make their own lives a little more secure, not for the benefit of others, especially at the expense of the weakest and the vulnerable. Thieves and bandits, Jesus calls them, not even shepherds. Thieves and bandits preying on the flock, not caring for the flock. And then he repeats himself again. I'm the gate. I'm the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved, or within the story world of the metaphor, will be safe. Will be safe. The picture is they come in through me, and they're safe. There's the safety and the security of the pen. There's no danger and no fear. They go out and find freedom and pasture. They come in and they go out, and I'm that gate. The thief, he says, going back to that other picture, the thief only comes to prey on the sheep, to steal and kill and destroy, but I have come that they would have life, and that they would have it, what is this word? Abundantly. And Jesus describes following him and following his leadership. It's like finding life, full and overflowing life, like those vats of wine at the wedding, like there's just too much good stuff. It's like that. It's this abundant, overflowing, too much good life. It's like, he says in John 5, it's like passing from death to life, from a shadow existence to life, translated into an entirely different dimension of living, the life of the age to come, the life that you have longed for, the more to this life that you imagined and knew had to be out there somewhere. Jesus describes himself as the gate or the portal into this life. And strangely, we find it hard to trust him. We doubt his wisdom. We question his vision and intentions for our lives. Like if we truly follow, with reckless abandon, whatever you say, I do. Wherever you lead, I follow. I will go because you are my shepherd, and I will follow you. With that, if we really do that, he will somehow limit our lives, not liberate our lives. That he will somehow lead us into less life, not more life, while all the time he's been trying to lead us out of the dark dungeons that we have created for ourselves and let us run free in the pastures of the light of day. And here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to know. Following Jesus' voice will always, always, and only lead you to life. Jesus' voice will always and only lead us to life, never to death, never to less life, only to more. It's why we say around here all the time that following Jesus will make your life better. Not easier, but easier isn't better. Following Jesus will make your life, it will make your life better, and it will make you better at life if you truly follow him, because he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant, and he knows you like for reals, and he loves you, and he knows what real life is. Not the shadow life of upside down world, not merely existing. He knows what real life actually is, and he knows where that life is to be found. He knows where the pastures are, and he will lead you there if you will let him. His voice will always and only lead you to life. I'm the gate, the portal to life, my friends, he says. And then he turns to another part of the metaphor, another one of these I am statements. And again, he's going back to their history, and especially the prophet Ezekiel. Imagine how these words would have landed for those who knew where these words came from. In contrast to those bad shepherds who destroyed his flock, that there was a shepherd to come, and Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. It's like, did he just say what I think he said? Because we know what Ezekiel said. Did he just say that he's the good shepherd? And the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep, not the other way around. The good shepherd, and everyone would know this, would be willing to risk their lives for the good of the sheep, not the other way around. But then he states the obvious. But the hired hand is not the shepherd, and he doesn't own the sheep, and so he doesn't think like an owner, which is a buzz phrase in business world these days. Think like an owner. You've heard that phrase before. You need to think like an owner. And thinking like an owner, like what employer wouldn't give anything to have a team of people who think like the owner, who care for the organization and care for its future and care for its people like the owner cares for it. But this guy doesn't think like the owner. And so when he sees the wolf coming, when he sees a threat to his own life and livelihood, when he sees danger coming, well, he just takes off. He's not gonna put his own life on the line for somebody else's sheep. He abandons the sheep and runs away. And then the danger happens. The wolf happens, and people are hurt, and the sheep are scattered, and the man runs away because he's not in it for the sheep. He doesn't care about the sheep. He cares about himself. But Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd. I'm the good shepherd. And then he makes 2 points. He says, and as the good shepherd, number one, I know my sheep. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And he taps into the Father-Son relationship that has dominated John's description of Jesus throughout this biography, this relationship that Jesus talks about all the time of constant connection and responsiveness and mutuality, of love and delight. And Jesus says, that same relationship that I have with my Father, I have with my sheep, and my sheep have with me. I am the good shepherd, and because I'm the good shepherd, I know my sheep, and I, in contrast to those shepherds from Ezekiel 34, and in contrast to the shepherds in front of him in this minute, and a long, long line of so-called shepherds before and since, I lay down my life for the sheep. I lay down my life for the sheep. I am the shepherd who has come to die for the sheep, not the other way around. And now, as Jesus often does, he breaks the bounds of the metaphor. Now it's gotten a little like, this doesn't really work in the story world anymore, because though lots of shepherds would risk their lives to protect their flock, no shepherd would knowingly and intentionally give their lives to save a sheep. It is a complete and utterly extreme reversal of self-serving leadership. It is self-sacrificial leadership. And then he continues, just to be clear, he says, just to be clear, no one takes it from me. No one takes it from me. And they don't know what he's talking about yet. But a day will come when it will look like a whole lot like someone is taking his life away from him. He says, oh, but don't be mistaken in that moment, my friends. That will be me on my own accord, laying down my life for the good of the sheep, because I have the authority or the power, you could translate that, to lay down my life, and I have the authority or the power to take it up again. This command, and a command implies the authority to execute it, this command or this authority I've received from my Father. Now, clearly, the good shepherd, the sacrifice oneself for the good of all the others shepherd, that's Jesus. And this story is really about what he is going to do for the sheep. And in fact, this scene sets up the following scenes. It becomes like the interpretive framework for understanding the next few scenes as Jesus first puts his life on the line and really ultimately sacrifices himself to save a friend named Lazarus. And then on a much larger scale, he lays down his life for his friends. Greater love has no one than this, than he laid down his life for his friends and his followers, and indeed for the whole world. But at that time, at the same time, it becomes really clear that as Jesus walks this way of self-sacrificial leadership, that his way, his leadership paradigm of the one who uses power for the benefit of the others, who uses authority, who uses position, and even in sacrificial ways for the benefit of the others, that this way was to become the model for all who would follow him in his way, that we would become people We would become people in a right side up world who leverage what we have for the good of others. That we would become people who leverage whatever it is that we have a little bit more of for the good of those who have a little bit less of it, never for ourselves. That good leaders and good shepherds and good parents and good bosses and good teammates and good coaches and good teachers, they leverage what they have, that voice, that authority, that power, that advantage, whatever it is they have a little bit more of, they leverage that for the good of others and especially for the good of those who do not have it, who have less of it. That's the Jesus model of influence and leadership and power, that the purpose of power is never for the powerful, but to be leveraged for the benefit of the powerless. And then John closes the scene by pointing to, once again, the mixed reaction that happens almost every time Jesus talks in John's biography. The Judeans who heard these words, because he's in Judea at this time, they were divided, and many of them said, this guy's demon-possessed. He's raving mad. Why are we even standing here listening to him? But then there were others that said, no, these aren't the sayings of a man possessed by a demon. Can a demon open the eyes of the blind? Indeed. And John is once again, as he does throughout his story, just inviting us to wrestle with this, to come to our own conclusion about who is Jesus and do I trust him? Will I follow him too? And we will pick it up right there next week as we near the end of the story and the series, Eyewitness, John and the Rabbi from Nazareth. But first, I want to end with a couple of questions for us just to bring it home. A couple of questions that I think this story just really begs of me. The story almost requires me to ask this of myself. And the first question to just wrestle with a little bit this morning for yourself is this one right here. And you could just ask yourself this right now. Am I following the voice of the Good Shepherd? Am I hearing his voice? Do I recognize it? Am I following the voice of the Good Shepherd? Am I daily, dare I say moment by moment, following the voice of the Good Shepherd? Is that my GPS? Is that how I am guiding my way through my life? Am I even listening for it? In the cacophony, and that's a great word, cacophony, in the cacophony of voices and influencers, podcasters and pundits, the echo chamber of my own politics, my friends and family, the media and the music, the TikTok and the YouTube, here's a question, am I more spiritually formed right now by my algorithm than by the voice of the Good Shepherd? Am I being more spiritually shaped by my algorithm than by the voice of the Good Shepherd? Do I know his voice? Do I recognize his voice? Am I hearing it? And am I following it wherever he leads? And if you're a little iffy right now on your own answer to that question, if you're not so sure how you would answer it, I've got a great application for you. And the application is this. Take a short digital break. I mean, you don't even have to give up your phone for Lent. That would be crazy. Are you kidding me? Just a short one every day. The amount of time we spend on our phones, if you were to take 10 of those minutes, just a short digital break, and begin reading the teachings of Jesus, just the teachings of Jesus, just the red letters, as they say. The red letters refers to how in some Bibles the teachings, the words of Jesus are in red. You just start to focus on that. Just read the words of Jesus, read them until you know them, and you know them cold. And in fact, you might start with what, for the earliest Christians, they considered this the core. This was the followership or discipleship manual, Matthew 5 through 7, 3 chapters. Read them over and over. Read them so many times over the next few weeks that you know what he's about to say before you even get to that line because you have read it so many times. Read that until you know it, and then move to the next one. Move to the next section of what he teaches. Read the part in the middle, of course, but read the words of Jesus until you know them and you know the voice. You know what he says. Get to know the voice of the Good Shepherd. Am I following that voice? Is that what's shaping me and guiding me right now? Or am I being guided by something very different that just might be a thief or a bandit? Am I? Here's another question. Am I leveraging whatever I have for the good of others? Am I leveraging whatever I have? And we all have something. Some of us have a lot. Influence, resources, opportunity. You have a voice, maybe not with everybody. None of us have a voice with everybody, but you have a voice with somebody, position. You have some knowledge. There are things you know. There's something that you have more of that other people have less of. And here's the question. Am I using what I have more of for the good of others? Or Is it possible that I'm leading out of need, out of my need, that I'm parenting out of my own black hole of neediness or brokenness? Ooh, could that be, that happens? Am I engaging? Am I influencing? Am I interacting with this group out of my need? Is my influence maybe completely unintentionally being shaped by my own insecurity and neediness or fears or shame or brokenness? And get this, it's okay to have need. That's human. It's okay to need. It's okay to be broken. It's okay to want something from people as much as we want something for them. And it is okay to see that and be aware that that is there. But when I start to lead out of that, I inadvertently and inevitably become self-serving rather than self-sacrificial, rather than seeing that moment that I have with my children or my classroom or my teammates, rather than seeing my influence, my voice, my knowledge, my authority or my advantage as a means for making other people's lives better, making them shine, pushing them forward, making them great. What I will often unintentionally do is I will begin to use others, my own children perhaps, my spouse, my team, my group. I will begin to use others as a means to fill my need, to prop me up, to make me feel okay, or to make me look better. And few things in this life, because we see it all the time, few things in this life are as disturbing as when we see someone with power and influence and resources leveraging all of that for themselves and their own advantage at the expense of others, and especially at the expense of people who often have so much less than they have. Few things are more disturbing than that, and we see it all the time. And at the same time, few things, isn't this true, are more inspiring than when someone has all of that. They have power, they have knowledge, they have influence, they have authority, they have a voice, and they are leveraging that to make other people better, to make other people shine better, not me, you, even at times at their own expense in this self-sacrificial way. In fact, some of our favorite stories in life are of leaders who did just that, who led self-sacrificially, who poured themselves out, who laid down their lives for the sheep, and the integrity and the selflessness, and they fought for others and they leveraged for others. Few things are more inspiring than those kinds of stories. Isn't that true? Is that me? Is that you? Do I want it to be? Do you want that to be you this week? Here's a question. How can the self-sacrificing leadership style of Jesus shape my own influence this week? How can I let that happen? So this week, as you go through this week, ask yourself, am I going to listen to? Am I going to learn how to hear and recognize and follow the voice of the Good Shepherd who will only lead me to life? He is the portal to life. And how can I leverage over the course of this week, anytime I find myself in a moment where I have a little power or influence or a little voice, how can I leverage that for the good of the other people in the room? And with those two questions in mind, I want to invite you to pray. And as I often do, it's like, set aside anything. Let's take a moment, maybe open your hands. I often, almost always pray with my hands open in this posture of openness. And you might bring those two questions to your Heavenly Father. So as you close your eyes, you might say, okay, Father, I want to have this conversation with you. Am I learning how to recognize the voice of the Good Shepherd? Am I hearing that? Is that what's guiding me right now in my life? Do I want that to guide me? And then you might ask him, as I head in the week, I'm going to take some steps to actually learn to hear your voice. I'm going to read your words. I'm going to do something, pausing and listening, actually asking and listening. But I want you to guide me. I want to follow you wherever you go, and wherever you lead, I'll do that. I'll go there. And then, Father, as we think through our week and the circles that we'll be in and the places we'll interact, I pray that we would use our leadership, and maybe you just have this conversation for yourself. God, I want to use influence. I want to use voice. I want to use those moments. Could I just be selfless and shine the light on others and make them better with no concern whatsoever for myself? Can I do that? God, I pray that you will guide me into those moments this week. And we pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.